Get ready to take a flamethrower to the official narrative and learn what the elites don't want you to know. You're listening to The Tom Woods Show.
Everybody, Tom Woods here. It is episode 2700. What episode is it? 2711 of The Tom Woods Show. Look at him shaking his head. Like, what?
How do you do that?
This is just nuts. What is going on here? I'm really glad to be able to talk once again with the great Buck Johnson. If you don't know Buck Johnson, what a shame. What a terrible, terrible shame. This will be another opportunity to rectify that injustice. The first time was at Ron Paul's birthday party, 90th birthday party earlier this year. Buck is the host of Counterflow with Buck Johnson. You will enjoy that podcast about all kinds of different topics. There's nothing is off limits, from the spiritual to the mundane, and everything in between on Counterflow with Buck Johnson. But I want to talk to somebody. You know, sometimes old Woods gets lonely around here, and I wish to myself I had a co-host. You know, I don't have a co-host, but sometimes I just want to talk to somebody. So it falls to Buck Johnson to be that person for us today. And in particular, I thought, you know, I know it's been a few days since this all happened, but we're all still trying to figure out what this all means for the future. We knew that there were attacks on Thomas Massie, of course, and that there was starting to be a little bit of pushback against Marjorie Taylor Greene. But my gosh, what Trump tweeted out there, or with Truth Social over the weekend, toward Thomas Massie, but much more importantly, Marjorie Taylor Greene, almost defies belief. I mean, I can't, like, even if I were a sycophant, even then I would have to say, well, now this really is kind of embarrassing behavior. Nobody acts like this. I'll explain what happened in a minute, but I have a sense most people know the details here. But I mean, what do you make of this, Buck?
It was shocking. Initially, the attacks on Massie seemed maybe the first ones. You know, it's been a while now. I thought, I guess he's trying to get a vote, and Massie doesn't want the vote. Whatever. It seemed political. The newest ones with Massie were really personal and sort of disturbing, about his wife and that she married a loser. We'll get back to Massie, but the ones with MTG were, I would say, shocking, to be quite honest, because every time I've heard her speak, up until about 3 days ago, she was sort of like one of the biggest Trump people that still sticking by him no matter what. Sometimes you hear Tucker maybe take a subtle jab. He never really does it directly, but you sort of know where he's going with it. And I never heard MTG do anything like that. She seemed to ride the initial the MAGA wave, and that got her to office, and she's been a number one supporter. And now all of a sudden, these crazy tweets come out, and I find it odd that he would attack her first and foremost when, like your newsletter said this morning, I believe he was playing golf with Lindsey Graham.
Yeah. I mean, that just adds insult to injury.
Yeah, and his fan base, the MAGA fan base, hates Lindsey Graham. He has to understand that, and they love MTG. And it's like, will the real Donald Trump please stand up here? What is going on?
Yeah, well, I guess this is the real Donald Trump. It's sad to say. And yet, he's the kind of guy who doesn't forget a slight. But he will forget a slight in some cases. He will forget that, you know, it's easy to cheer for Trump on election night, you know, when he's the king of the world and he's vanquished his enemies. That's easy. You know what's hard is to stand up and say the propaganda around January 6th is off the charts ridiculous. It is not what people say it was, and we got to bring this down a few notches. And I stand with the president. This was not an insurrection or any of this other nonsense people are saying. Well, that's what MTG did, but Lindsey Graham on the Senate floor said, you know, I have said that Donald Trump was a consequential president, but this, I'm out. I'm out. So I'm out were his words. But yet there he is, happily golfing with the president, who completely forgets that at the key moment when it was the most difficult to stand up for him, Lindsey Graham was sliding the dagger right into his back. And I guess that's all forgotten. That's weird. That you can overlook that, but you can't overlook a couple of votes that are obviously justifiable, that obviously seem like where we thought you stood, and from people who 99% of the time, well, maybe not 99, but a heck of a lot percent of the time, as you say, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, have supported him and supported him and supported him. And as you say, up till very recently, you would see anytime she could find grounds to support him and cheer for him, she would do that. And for him, it's, well, you took this or that position against me. And look, she would like nothing more than not to have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Just be the guy you said you were going to be, and we won't even have to do this.
Is the latest thing, I'm still slightly unclear on why he did this. Is it the Epstein stuff?
I think it's got to be the Epstein stuff. I mean, she has also started to say, we're not America first enough here. This Israel stuff is too much. So it's those two seem
those
to
are
be
related, in my opinion, by the way.
Oh, and no doubt they are related. But my gosh, those seem to be the two things that are unforgivable.
Yes.
You can't, and Massey, look, this whole Epstein thing, is there a quote unquote list? And I don't know the ins and outs of that. But what I do know is that, as Massey says, if this were really just a quote hoax, then you really do have to ask why the president's own son obviously does not believe it's a hoax, as we know from his own posts.
Mm-hmm.
And Kash Patel didn't seem to think it was a hoax until later, and you go down the list, J.D. Vance didn't seem to think it was a hoax. There's a long list of people who should know better,
Mm-hmm.
who didn't think it was a hoax. So they deserve a sharp talking to by a certain U.S. president if they were that wrong about it.
Mm-hmm.
But so Massey comes out and says, look, if you're going to vote against this thing that I'm proposing, bear in mind the president might come endorse you in 2028, but in 2030 he's not going to be president anymore, and you're going to be on record having voted to defend pedophiles. So cast this vote carefully. But now we've got Trump saying, "Oh, good, no, you should go ahead and support the release of the Epstein files, and I'll direct Pam Bondi to look at Epstein's relationship with all the key Democrats."
Mm-hmm.
So you don't know. So it was a hoax. There's no files. There's no. We have these binders that we give to influencers that have nothing of value in them.
Yes.
And they say part 1 on them, and then there's no part 2, and then the whole thing's a hoax. Well, then maybe it's not a hoax, and there's something to do with the Democrats, and we'll release that. If you can keep this straight, you have a higher IQ than I do.
Yeah, it's we know he was a good reality television actor, and now, and of course, we understand much of politics is kayfabe, sort of like wrestling. But it really, with the binders and the journalists, the right-wing influencers, look, I've got the things. And then all of a sudden, wait, no, it doesn't exist. Well, maybe it exists. It's the Democrats, though. That's who it is. And the people who don't believe it's a hoax, that's the MAGA Trump fan base. It's the MAGA voters who know it's not a hoax. I strongly think that this is one of the reasons people elected him. And there's probably Democrats that thought, well, I can't stand Kamala Harris. That's really not going to go well. At least Trump wants to expose the corruption of Epstein and whatnot. And then he's got the chance to do it. I'm afraid that if he doesn't do it or it doesn't happen now, it won't happen is part of my issue with this.
The way he handled it just couldn't have been worse. I mean, how could he have made himself look more suspicious than he did in the way he handled this? And people are trying to throw him lifelines. You don't have to do this. You could just release what they've got or whatever. But to call it a Democrat hoax after all this, when all your people have been going around talking about it, that's just crazy. And then to fly off the handle at people who, among a decent chunk of the base, are quite popular. Now, it's true that Massey's not as popular as Trump, but Trump's victories are not nearly as big as people think. I mean, in terms of number of states, yeah, that was big, and number of really contested states. He won them all. I get it, but going into the midterms where the incumbent party is always at a disadvantage, I want my whole base together and then some.
Mhm.
And he has just, like a bull in a china shop, just smashed big parts of his base. There are going to be people he needs at the polls who will stay home. They're absolutely, because of the ridiculous. Even if he didn't want to release the Epstein files, he doesn't have to say that everybody who is interested in them is some kind of a weirdo or an idiot or a useful idiot of the Democrat. Like, he has to call them all names too.
Mhm.
Well, you know what? Then I'm just going to stay home. And they don't want to stay home because they know that the other party hates their guts and can't wait to grab power again and make their lives miserable. They don't want to stay home. But I have some dignity.
Right. And there's a part of this where it's like, if you guys lose the midterms, you kind of did this yourselves. You can't count on, I think it was Nixon had this campaign where, he didn't care about the Southern votes because he's like, well, I'm going to get those. So he could sort of, basically ignore those people. We're not in that world anymore. And there's a weird sort of boomer energy that Trump used to not have, I thought. And now he's got it. And the people that care about the Israel First stuff, and maybe they would fall for the Epstein thing being a hoax, that generation's, unfortunately, because they're my parents are in this generation, but they're not going to be alive a whole lot longer. And you've got a radical Nick Fuentes led young generation that looks at all of this and just shakes their head and says, no, I'm not falling for all of your crap anymore. And we want someone more radical. And I think that I like J.D. Vance, but I think that Trump is now putting him at a massive disadvantage if he wanted to be proceed Trump in 2028. I'm not sure that he's going to have this opportunity because he's going to have to distance himself. This isn't going away.
Yeah.
This push for the Epstein files, this push that Israel controls too much of our foreign policy and institutions, to be quite honest, that's not going away. It's only getting stronger. If you look under Mark Levin or Ted Cruz, everything they post on X, you look under it and it's 99% hatred. Yes, towards them, and people understand what they're doing. The best thing Ted Cruz did, in my opinion, for the country is go on Tucker Carlson and show his hand and show exactly what he got elected for, to promote Israel first. He said it to Tucker. Meanwhile, not being able to defend the biblical position on why he even thinks this, which shows you that's just a line to appease Southern evangelicals. The real thing is where he's getting his money from.
Yeah, the fact that he, as I said in another episode, all he had to say was, he doesn't have to know chapter and verse. He can just say the book that it was in. He can just say it's in the, he could have put it this way to make it sound like he knew what he was talking about. He could have said, Tucker, for heaven's sake, we're talking about something as fundamental as the book of Genesis here. This is fundamental to our faith, and then just gone from there.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't even seem to know that much.
No.
That was
because
bad.
I think he deeply doesn't care about that. I think that's all talking points, again, he knows he's in Texas, right? Where I'm at. So I get that voter base. I sort of think Tucker ended Ted Cruz's political future. The only fear I have that he may not have is that vote, I looked it up, doesn't come up again until 2030. And I hope our memories aren't that short.
Yeah. But you're right that if he were sincere about his religious motivations for this, he could have told us, like where it reminds me of Reverend Lovejoy on The Simpsons, where occasionally you ask him, well, Reverend Lovejoy, where's that in the Bible? And he'd say, oh, somewhere in the back. It's kind of like Ted Cruz's answer to the Israel question about in the Bible. All right, so I still want to unpack this whole thing more. And I'm another thing I'm tired of having to do You didn't have to do this in the old days. You didn't have to say, I don't agree with so-and-so on everything, but
Right.
blah, 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 blah. I don't want to have to say that. So everybody listening to me now, just take for granted that if I talk about somebody, I don't agree with everything that person says. Because why would I? Right? Probably there'd be no reason to think I would. Why would you think I would agree with somebody on everything? So I don't feel the need to do that. So I'm not going to do it for I guess I've implicitly done it now for Marjorie Taylor Greene, because that's irrelevant. That's totally irrelevant. The fact is, she has stood up to the most powerful man in the world and has taken the slings and arrows like you wouldn't believe. And to see his sycophants cheering him on against her, when it takes no courage for him to do what he did, but stones, like a size you can't even believe for her to stand up against him in return. And incidentally, you read his posts about her and it's just he's calling her Marjorie Traitor Greene because why? Because she wants the Republican Party to actually do what it campaigned on, or Marjorie Taylor Brown because that's what happens to Greene when it rots. I mean, it's like we all knew he was this way on some level. Like we all knew this was kind of who he was. But I guess we thought, okay, but he's smashing the media and he's saying nasty things to them, and they deserve to have nasty things said to them.
Right.
And maybe if we could somehow, I don't know, just endure this enough so that maybe when it's all over, he will have said terrible things to all the people who deserve to have terrible things said to them. I guess that's kind of how I was navigating this. And then to see this stuff about, he feels like Thomas Massey got married again too soon.
Yeah.
Oh, because we really need to consult Donald Trump about marriage.
Right. Yeah,
Just,
that's the
just
one that
incredible.
was the most shocking to me when I actually saw that in your newsletter. I hadn't even seen him post that. The part of when you attack Massey, it's sort of like attacking Ron Paul, because it's not politics that's being attacked here. You're attacking a genuinely good man. Our friend Jeff Deist had sent me there's a short video biography on Massey. I believe it was on YouTube. Like there's nothing that I could attack about the man. He lives off the grid. He literally lives what he preaches. He practices what he preaches. He's off the grid. He grows his own, organic food, all of these things. And Donald Trump, who eats McDonald's cheeseburgers and has been married multiple times, is attacking Thomas Massey's marriage choice. It's, at least he did post that wonderful thing about Ron Paul when Ron Paul was in the hospital.
Yeah, but all he posted was great.
Great.
The word
Yeah.
great. I'll take that.
Yeah.
But the Massey thing, like, again, this is like just an unforced error. I mean, you figure out ways to cope with a guy like Massey, but the fact is, Massey votes with you 91% of the time. I'm sure Lindsey Graham doesn't. I would be curious to know, what is the voting record for Lindsey Graham? Why is he given a pass on this? Why is there so much anger at Marjorie and Thomas Massey? Why is there so much anger at them? Far more anger than we ever saw directed at Anthony Fauci. Far more anger. We've never seen any anger toward Randy Fine, who says things that would give you a chill, send a chill up your spine about other human beings. Not a word to him. Lindsey Graham, who stabbed him in the back. When's he been that angry at Lindsey Graham? I mean, there's something odd about a man who is so eager to appease people who have always hated his guts, like Mark Levin. Mark Levin has always hated Trump, hates him now, and will always hate him. And he's dying to make that guy happy, while meanwhile cutting off people who are just honest and they're in this not because of a cult of personality, but because they believe in certain things that they thought you believed in. And they had good reason for thinking that, because they were basing their belief on your own words, and it takes courage to stand up against the Israel lobby. Let's face it, there's no, I know other countries get aid, but there really isn't an Azerbaijan lobby. There just isn't. Let's not be children about this. We all know there is a powerful Israel lobby. And, the people trying to convince us there isn't, are the same people who spend most of their time on social media trying to destroy people who disagree with them on this issue. So they're constantly proving our point. These are people who, it takes guts to stand up against that, to stand up against the Democrats, which are the more popular party in the media, and to stand up against sometimes their own party, their own president. That's not fun. They don't do that for the attention or the publicity. That is a terrible position to be in. You would think there'd be part of you that could at least have a kind of grudging respect for that. In a way, you're like me. I was the maverick who stood up against the establishment. I can kind of respect that. And yet, I don't know here. That's certainly not what they're getting.
Yeah, and I think some of his loyalists use he's really the whole 4D chess thing. But if you just back out and sort of look what's happened along the way, who's he endorsed, who's he dissed on social media, this is a really strange way to play 4D chess. It almost looks like it's like the old thing. I don't know if you're compromised by Israel, but if you were, it might look something like this, especially going against Thomas Massey and MTG and playing golf with Lindsey Graham. Think about each person's position on foreign policy and look where Trump's falling in this.
Hey everybody, Christmas is coming and Old Woods has you covered. How about getting family and friends something you know for sure they want? Delicious steaks, not to mention mouth-watering burgers, chicken, pork, seafood, delicious comfort foods, and delectable desserts from Omaha Steaks. And now during their Sizzle All the Way sale, you can get 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $35 off with promo code WOODS at checkout. Woods family first ordered Omaha Steaks back about 15 years ago, and the quality and value can't be beat. Every steak is perfectly aged to maximize tenderness and hand-cut by master butchers in America's heartland. Omaha Steaks is a family-owned company with over 100 years of experience in the meat industry. Well, save big on gourmet gifts and more holiday favorites with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide during their Sizzle All the Way sale, and for an extra $35 off, use promo code WOODS at checkout. Terms apply. See site for details. That's omahasteaks.com, code WOODS. By the way, in case anybody is looking behind me saying, well, Tom has an interesting looking house, but it's not exactly what I was expecting. I'm actually in a hotel at the moment. This is not my usual setup. I was telling Buck we're in town visiting Grove City College, which is a college you should all know about. If you don't know about Grove City College, it's where Hans Sennholz taught, who was the head of the Foundation for Economic Education for a long time. Its entire economics department is Austrian. You can send your kids there. They will not come home with blue hair. And I'm interested in, one of my daughters interested in attending there. So we took a very nice campus tour. I had lunch with the president. It was not Trump, the college president. So it's a great place. I highly recommend you look into it. If you would like college for your child, but you don't want them coming home hating everything you stand for, Grove City College outside Pittsburgh is worth looking at. All right, let's go back to what we were talking about here. So let's do an assessment now of like the past, I don't know, month or two for the Trump people, because there was a time early on this year when Trump seemed to have a lot of momentum.
Yes.
And it seemed like he was taking names and he was going to be maybe the kind of guy people thought he was going to be in 2016. And he's putting RFK Jr. in HHS, which I couldn't believe that. I thought there would be no chance of that. He would never expend political capital like that for this. But he did that. And he put Jay Bhattacharya in, and there were some good picks in a number of places. Then there were some telltale signs. If you had to make a list of all the people you would consider for Secretary of State, where would Marco Rubio wind up, Buck?
He wouldn't be on the list. Yes, yes.
If right, we wouldn't even show up. So there were some telltale signs. But it kind of looked like, oh my gosh, he realized that this is my second and final term, and we're going to get some things done. And then I don't know what went wrong, but suddenly it went wrong. Like, what do you feel like? What was the? Maybe I'm asking a lot here because so much has happened in these
Yes.
11 months. But was there a moment where you said, wait a minute, maybe this thing is going off the rails?
I think it's a collective moment. There's a few things. Like I think, I don't know if I told you this offline or we were already speaking, but the Epstein thing is very tied in closely with the Israel stuff. It's both of these things combined, because if you look at the people that are yelling in Trump's favor online, for one, it's people who are quickly losing any popularity that they already had. Ben Shapiro, Mark Levin, Ted Cruz, probably Lindsey Graham, I suppose. I don't follow whatever he's doing, but look where they're at on Israel, right? And then Tucker having Nick Fuentes on seemed to be sort of at the boiling point. Now, I've heard recently that that President Trump said, oh, Tucker can have who he wants on. And yeah, Nick Fuentes showed up with Kanye West at my place. I didn't know he was coming, something like that. For him, he could have said something much worse, I suppose. I wonder now if he's thinking, goodness, people are pushing back hard on some of these things. Now, I have to think that Epstein, the initial thing of him just saying, hey, there's no list, which is playing fast and loose with terms, right? I don't know that there's a quote unquote list. But it seemed to be around that time because there was that initial tease with the right-wing journalist, hey, I've got the binder and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, no, it's a hoax. And that's when I started seeing a lot of pushback and hearing people, podcasters saying like, wait, what? It's not a hoax. We all know it's not a hoax. The MAGA fan base definitely knows it's not a hoax. And stuff started falling off the rails at that point. Another interesting moment, Dave Smith goes on Joe Rogan and debates the British guy whose name's escaping me.
Douglas Murray.
Douglas Murray. It becomes a total meme. Douglas Murray looks like a joke. Everyone's laughing, making the, hey, you've never been, and all these things. And Trump's account tweets Douglas Murray's book the next day. I don't know if Trump was in control of that, but clearly we now know that Douglas Murray works for the Israeli government. So it has to do with these things. I just don't think there's any doubt about that. And at the same time, his whole fan base and his voter base is pushing back against these very things that he's now choosing to take on the opposite way. And I think it's falling apart. The only people supporting this, again, are people with losing popularity. No one really listens to Mark Levin. He doesn't have a face for TV nor a voice for radio, yet here he is for some reason. But Tucker Carlson's the biggest, and Candace Owens is the biggest in the world right now on the podcast stage. Tucker's not far behind. And these people their audiences far outnumber anyone that's siding with Donald Trump right now. And that's why I think Tucker has more power maybe than he realizes. I don't know, but I certainly think he's got more power than Donald Trump right now as far as winning hearts and minds, if you will, to use an old phrase. Tucker drops this episode on Crooks, the guy that shot at Trump, and how the FBI has covered it up. The next day, they released tweets saying, well, we went through this, It's like, you guys are responding to Tucker Carlson calling you out. Yeah. That's interesting. That's a lot of power.
I just got busy and I didn't listen to any of that. I don't know what any of that is all about, but everybody's commenting on it. And I feel like, oh, I missed something. What was it? Are you able to just summarize what the gist of that was?
The gist of it was that Thomas Crook's online presence went from initially very far right wing, I would say bordering on somewhat racist, and he's leaving comments on YouTube. These have all been shown on that episode. And then, boom, someone started responding to him in the comments, who Tucker's crew did some research on, trying to find out who this person was, basically egging him on, saying, hey, you should start taking some action against these people. And Thomas Crook's online presence went complete left wing, saying that MAGA voters are in a cult, and it just swung completely opposite. And then the FBI tells us, no, he didn't really have an online presence. We didn't find much. He just didn't have much. Well, yes, he did. Why'd you tell us that he didn't? And then why was it all scrubbed? Except for there's these ways online, and I sound like a boomer now because I don't quite get it, of where you can find stuff that has since been taken down, but it still exists somewhere out there. So Tucker's team went through all of these quotes from Thomas Crooks, and it looks like there was at least some sort of cover up, and he's just asking questions, saying, "Why are you guys telling us this? Well, look, we went and found all of this information." The next day, the FBI drops all. Well, we went through. It was 290 FBI agents went through all of these details, blah, blah, blah. And it's just in response to Tucker Carlson putting an episode out there, asking some questions, showing that there perhaps was cover-ups here and there. And why is it covered up?
Yeah. It's an amazing time there's really never been anything like this before, where first of all, the mainstream media being as powerful as it got was a novelty in human history, because we'd never had video media till the 20th century. So this is a whole new thing. But then to have that be, I wouldn't say it's been completely supplanted, but it's been certainly, it's like a tidal wave hit it, because now you have all these influencers with podcasts who can, as you say, make news happen or force the powers that be to respond to things. And we've never experienced this before, which is one of the white pills of this discouraging period.
Yes.
That we don't know what's going to happen next, and we don't know who's going to say what and what direction public opinion is going to move in, because there's nobody like in charge of it anymore. There's no Walter Cronkite who's smoothing out what the official message to be given to the public is. Now, I don't know what this means. I don't know what comes next, but it certainly looks like Trump had the possibility to do a lot of things that he's not doing, doesn't want to do, has changed his mind on, wants to denounce people for supporting. And now with the tariff stuff, so now he's going to take off tariffs on bananas and something else, because they're raising prices for consumers, and we shouldn't do that. Okay, well, that does raise the question: if you feel like that's the correct analysis of tariffs, why did we do this?
Mm-hmm.
If the argument right now is that things are not affordable, why would we not want to pull out all the stops to make them as affordable as possible? So I don't know. I don't know what ever happens. It's one of these things where Murray Rothbard's law, one of his laws, comes into play, where one of his laws is everybody focuses on the area in which he's worst. And so Rothbard used to give the example, there are a couple of economists that he might like otherwise, but who aren't so good on monetary economics. Well, what do they focus all their time on? Monetary economics. Well, likewise, Trump does have some things that he's good on, where his instincts are good. What does he focus all his time on? Tariffs. So that's not good. But I think now, I mean, we've got this claim that he's going to give dividends because of all the tariff income that's coming in. We got the 50-year mortgage thing. There's so many simple, basic things he could do if he wanted to put forth his program and to reassure middle America that he's their champion, that he's not focused on Venezuela and Israel and Ukraine and whatever, but he really is going to be America first. That, you know what, I've appointed a blue ribbon commission, and its job is to come up with 50 things that government at all levels is doing that has the result of higher prices, and we're going to just reverse all those things. I want to report on my desk what are 50 things we're doing. Obviously this is not getting to the heart of it, which is the Federal Reserve, but right. I'll give him a pass on that. No president goes after the Federal Reserve. There are things he could do. What is making house prices so high? Is there any policy that we've enacted that is tending to make housing prices high? We're going to reverse that. Do something dramatic like that. And for some reason, he'd rather bomb boats off of Venezuela or something.
Yeah, and back to what you were saying about the press, part of the interesting twist in all of this, a lot of that, the press had, they've been defanged, let's say the mainstream media, for instance. A lot of that's because of Donald Trump. The popularity of Tucker Carlson and These were MAGA people. That was because of Donald Trump. He red-pilled a whole generation of people, including my parents. My dad, classic voter of Republican Party for decades, got an offer in the mail from what was the neocon rag that's been around
the
forever.
Weekly Standard?
Yeah, Bill Kristol's Weekly Standard.
Yeah, Weekly Standard. Yeah.
My dad gets a subscription thing. Hey, and he literally writes back, "This is neocon scum. I'm MAGA," and mailed it back to them.
Oh my!
And so for Trump to sort of red pill so many people, and then sort of slowly walk back to where he thinks maybe people were before, it's too late. Because of Trump, the toothpaste is out of the tube, and you're only killing your own movement. And people like Ted Cruz, I was thinking about this. Remember when in the Ron Paul Revolution days, sort of the Tea Party sprung out of that. And we had these Ron Paul Tea Parties and Ron Paul, all of these fun things. Well, the Tea Party then, I mean, that's kind of how Rand rose to prominence. But people like Ted Cruz sort of co-opted it and took it over. And at first I remember thinking, well, maybe I'm in Texas. Maybe this Ted Cruz guy is pretty good. He seems to like the Tea Party types. Well, no, he's not. And interestingly enough, people like Ted Cruz are also trying to co-opt the MAGA movement and also run that into the ground. It's interesting how that works. But now, again, the Tea Party stuff was happening before this sort of wave of podcasters and online types were big. So it was easy to sort of squash and basically push it back out of the way.
Yeah. Make it into like just another GOP project.
You cannot do that anymore. So whether people are arguing online, hey, I'm America first or I'm MAGA, no, he's really MAGA, blah, blah, blah. The point is this movement, and I would liken it to like the Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes types and MTG. This isn't going away, but the Israel first stuff and these boomers like Mark Levin, that is going away. And so if Trump's going to side with that, he's only sinking JD Vance's chances, quite frankly. I still predict Tucker wins the Republican nomination in 2028, but we shall see.
Well, first of all, about the JD Vance thing. So obviously you could imagine Vance saying, well, look, I very much respect the president, but he and I are two different people, and I think blah, blah, blah. Try doing that with Donald Trump still alive in the White House, tweeting 24 hours a day.
You can't do it.
What are you going to do? You're in an impossible situation.
Right.
And I'm sure Vance realizes that. I am also sure that Vance would not have wanted, you want to say drunk, but the guy doesn't drink. I want to say drunk because it gives him a moral excuse for these dumb tweets. But Vance wishes he hadn't done that. And the thing is, there would have been a time, not that long ago, this very year, that if I had done an episode like this and we had talked about these tweets, people would have said, oh, you have Trump derangement syndrome, or, Marjorie's a traitor. But I think it's amazing how quickly people got over that.
Yes.
Because we realized, no, wait a minute, I'm not a child. I'm not a child.
Right.
This is silly and ridiculous. And maybe I did vote for him, they'll say, but I voted for particular things. I didn't vote for attacks on these particular people. And it's true that you can find some people on social media who will instantly adopt the White House, or not, I shouldn't even sugarcoat it like that, the Trump line on something, even if it's the opposite of what Trump said 3 weeks earlier.
Yes.
There are people who will say, this Epstein stuff is getting tiresome, and blah, blah, blah. But then you look through their own Twitter feed, and they themselves were saying, we got to get to the bottom of Epstein. Now, there are not going to be very many people in the grand scheme of things who are going to be willing to do that, who are going to have so little personal dignity that they would be willing to contradict themselves so openly, saying the exact opposite. Well, they just found one I retweeted, who I guess she said something like, this was my number one issue.
I saw
in
this.
September 2024. And now this is tiresome.
Yes.
Now, there aren't many people who have that little dignity.
Yeah.
I can't explain people who have that little dignity, but there aren't that many. And so you can't get a good result in the midterms relying solely on people who are willing to say the literal opposite of what they said their most profound beliefs were. You know, you can't win an election. Those people are the icing on the cake. They're not the cake. The cake is normal people who have opinions and they vote for you because you share those opinions. They're not looking for you to change their opinions. They're not looking for that. And yet that seems to be what he's going to be left with at this rate.
Yeah, boy, if we could clip what you just said and send it to him somehow, can someone out there please do that? He needs to hear this because I do think it's going to be, a bloodbath for the midterms.
And it didn't have to be.
No,
it did not have to be.
It could, and it's frustrating for me because again, I'm far from anything on the left, and so now I'm dealing with people I know in real life, seeing their posts that I tend to a little bit agree with. Like, yeah, they should release these Epstein things. Yeah, he is to Israel first, and they're just kind of having the View level analysis of it, which is frustrating. But you're giving your enemies plenty of things to work with. And you're only sucking up to people that don't actually like you anyway. And it's the biggest sale job that these guys are doing. I don't understand how it works. There must be something that's said in back rooms. There's power plays going on. There could be physical violence plays going on. I don't know what's happening. I will say also, back to when did the dam sort of break here, a lot of it seemed to be Charlie Kirk's public execution. There is something now when I look back, maybe he was sort of holding some of these coalitions together because the Israel First people, Charlie, I know, was faltering on that right before he died. But he did sort of have this unique way to have people like Tucker and Candace, and then people, I suppose, like Lindsey Graham, all sort of under this big tent. Maybe the head of the tent was actually Charlie Kirk, not Donald Trump, because he's gone. And all of these people are it's splintering like crazy. And the side that Trump is siding with now are losers. Ironically, he's calling Massey one. The people that are primarying, the fundraising to primary Massey is an Israel First fundraising group using a MAGA as their right. Logo.
Yeah.
It's like, do you think we're stupid? We all know what this, the information's out there. Again, this isn't Walter Cronkite days anymore.
Hey gang, let's smash another myth. I think most people think the only way to grow their money for retirement is to risk it in the stock market. Not true. You can reach your financial goals and dreams without taking any unnecessary risks. Bank on Yourself is the proven retirement plan alternative that lets you bypass Wall Street, beat the banks at their own game, and take control of your financial future. We're talking guaranteed, predictable growth and retirement income with no luck, skill, or guesswork required. Your plan doesn't go backward when the markets tumble. Both your principal and growth are locked in. You're in control. You get access to your money for emergencies and opportunities with no questions asked. There are no government penalties or restrictions on how much or when you can take it. And when you use your money, it keeps growing like you never touched it. Try doing that with a 401k or IRA. Not to mention built-in inflation protection. Your money is guaranteed to grow by a larger dollar amount every year in both good times and bad. You can get a free report with all the details on how the Bank on Yourself strategy adds guarantees, predictability, and control to your financial plan. Just go to bankonyourself.com/woods. That's bankonyourself.com/woods. Hey everybody, we hear a lot about rising prices and for good reason. But there's one very important thing whose cost is actually a lot lower than you think, and that's life insurance. 72% of Americans overestimate the actual cost of life insurance. Policy Genius makes finding and buying life insurance fast, easy, and surprisingly affordable. So if something happens to you, your loved ones have a financial safety net. With Policy Genius, real users have gotten 20-year, $2 million policies for just $53 a month. Here's how it works. You just go to policygenius.com, and with only a few clicks, you're comparing quotes from top insurers so you can find coverage that fits your needs and your budget. Their team of licensed agents will walk you through the process step by step, not to mention answering questions, handling paperwork, and advocating for you throughout the process. Policy Genius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace with thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who found the best policy fit for their needs. Secure your family's future with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com to compare life insurance quotes from top companies and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com. Again, I cannot imagine any American patriot. I mean, the thing is, let's suppose you support the cause of the current government of Israel. Like, you really support that. Even then, I could imagine you saying, well, this obnoxious behavior toward Thomas Massie is so over the top, it's going to backfire on us. I mean, potentially pouring $22 million into a GOP primary race? This is unheard of. You're going to do that? That is obnoxious behavior, because some Americans might think, well, I don't like the idea that billionaires whose allegiance is obviously to another country, we all know, I mean, they're not even trying to hide that.
Right.
They're not even trying to hide that. I mean, they're trying to unseat the best congressman we have, not because they don't like his agriculture policy.
Right.
We all know why they're trying to do that. There's no American patriot who has American blood in his veins that will look at that and say, oh, well, it's a democratic process. No. You say that is deranged. And again, could you imagine in Israel if people, supporting Zimbabwe or something were in there pushing one candidate over another, they'd say, what on earth is this, right?
Yeah.
And nobody would say, well, now, wait a minute, it's racist for you to... No,
right.
They would say it's the most normal thing in the world for you to object to this. Now, I, as an American, I want Thomas Massie in office because his being there means that there's some truth-telling that goes on in the House of Representatives, and that's a good thing for me and my family and the cause of freedom. So I think it's an outrage that my interests as an American are set aside so that, again, people whose primary allegiance is obviously to a country other than this one can get their way. I don't think they should get their way. I think Americans ought to get their way. And Americans have a lot to answer for. They've voted for a lot of bozos over the years.
Yeah.
But, them's the breaks. This is America. We cast our votes.
Yeah. And it's that the New York mayoral election that happened up there, they even tried to make that about Israel. They asked the socialist guy that won, what his stance on it was, and he actually sort of had an America First attitude. He said, I care about New York City. And he's going up against a guy who is one of the worst of all time. We all saw what happened during COVID. So there was part of me, I don't live there, but I thought, well, let's see how this goes. I'm certainly glad that a Cuomo lost. I wouldn't want to live under a socialist or a communist, but hey, it's not my city. That's I live in Texas. So I was kind of smiling just a little bit when that guy won, thinking, okay, well, you guys made this about Israel. And also, I understand that young people who don't necessarily go to Grove College and learn Austrian economics, they just see everything's expensive. And this guy says, I'm going to give you free stuff. And these people care about billionaires and millionaires, and I don't. I understand the instinct that an uneducated younger person would have to go, well, then I want him.
Well, there is also that interesting statistic about the group that he won overwhelmingly was people who just moved to New York City recently. The longtime New Yorkers overwhelmingly did not vote for him. Because this is, we know New York has problems, but that ain't the way to handle them. And so the immigrant population overwhelmingly voted for him, which is also, the whole thing's crazy. Again, these are people who, if they went to their home countries and a bunch of people from other countries suddenly showed up there and voted in a way that those people didn't like, they would be up in arms about it. But for some reason in America, it's everyone's human right to turn every place upside down and make it look like some other place when the people living there don't really want that. So, and I don't know, I could talk about that for quite a long time. So I wonder in 2028, is a representative of this kind of wing of the conservative, I don't even want to call it the conservative movement, because that just sounds so dumb now, so boomer. Whatever this is, the right wing, whatever, is there going to be an America First candidate on the debate stage in 2027 when they're gearing up for the election? That's the question, because that would make it interesting. That person might not win, but that person could call out a lot of what's going on that stage. And Ted Cruz is used to not being not having opposition on this, right?
Mhm.
I mean, they had Ron Paul, but they could just brush him aside. But now that message has started to resonate. These folks are not used to having to answer for this. Well, everybody knows that this is our foreign policy. Okay, but increasingly, a lot of people don't think it should be.
No.
So now what are you going to do? I wonder, is there going to be somebody willing to step forward and be that person? You would better wear a bulletproof vest.
Yeah, that's for sure. I can't get it out of the back of my mind that it's going to be Tucker Carlson. I felt it. I was wrong in 2024, but the moves he's making, the interviews he's doing, the ideas and political arguments that he's putting out there, the popularity he has, I can't imagine it not being him. And I think that position would win largely. I would say.
Well, you notice he keeps saying. Now, I know he said that he won't do these things, but a lot of people say they won't do things that they eventually do. But you notice that he keeps saying things like, a platform like that would be immensely popular.
Yes.
80% of America agrees with that.
Yep.
Now, he could say that for any reason, but maybe he's talking to himself when he says that. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. And I do remember I believe it was Megyn Kelly straight up asked him a few years ago. And initially he sort of did the Tucker laugh and no. And he said, and then there was a follow-up of, I mean, it would have to be like, I felt people really needed me or wanted me or something along those lines, where it left the door open just a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we do need him.
Obviously, sitting back waiting for the machine to churn somebody out isn't going to work.
No.
And the thing is, he's good on his feet. I think he would be a good debater. And when I listen to his monologues, look, there are some things that I would like to change about the way he thinks. But when I listen
you don't
to his
agree
monologue,
with everything Tucker says? Is that what you're saying?
Oh yeah, I don't agree with everything. I shouldn't have even said that. That's obvious. Of course I don't agree. I don't agree with everything anybody says. But when I listen to his monologue, when he's at his best, I'll put it this way. Sometimes I would watch a candidate I kind of liked on TV, but I'd be yelling things that he should say. Mm-hmm. You should say this, say this, say this. But with Tucker, I don't have to say that because he thinks of everything I would say and then 10 more things. He's so much better than I am at this. Those monologues are like a rhetorical bullet between the eyes. It's incredible how good he is at them.
Yes.
And I'm sure he has some help, but it sure sounds natural to me.
I know when he was I assume this is even more so now. I know when he was at Fox doing his show, he wrote every one of his monologues personally. And so I assume he's doing that now.
Yeah, it's like Pat Buchanan. He wrote all his own speeches. Could you imagine Pat letting somebody else write one of his speeches? No way.
Right. Yeah. And Tucker's takedown of Levin and Shapiro was just, I mean, it was chef's kiss good. And it was so true. And, people watching see that I've got Orthodox Christian stuff behind me. There is a very Orthodox, very Christian message in that my priest and spiritual father has told me over the years about various, topics. Don't become the thing that you're hating. Let go of the hate. Let go of this hate, because they're going to turn you the same way that they're acting. And so you need to relax on that. And it was beautiful.
I don't know who it was who said, maybe it was Daryl Cooper, but I'm not entirely sure, who recently said, all these people needed to do was just not be psychotic. This could have gone on. This situation where nobody can question the U.S.-Israel relationship, or heaven forbid, suggests that the U.S. and Israel might have different interests. It's anti-Semitic even to think that. All right, whatever. But that could have gone on for much longer if it hadn't been for everybody acting like what was going on in Gaza was perfectly normal. If people could have just been somewhat critical, just somewhat, a little bit critical.
Yeah.
And secondly, not be doing weird things like talking about Israeli history on July 4th, as Ted Cruz did. I like bringing that example up because it so sums up the madness of this situation, or the way our politicians are going to be judged according to what their policy is towards some foreign country somewhere. That's not normal. You got to knock that off, because especially now you're going after some of the best people we have. You got to knock that off, because that's going to be considered obnoxious by basically any sentient being. You can't do that. Like all you had to do was just turn the dial back a little bit, try to be reasonable, try to act like other people, the way other people act. Like most people think that in America, it's important that we focus on the interests of Americans. And so we shouldn't call people anti-Semitic or whatever when that's their main concern, because that's not a normal way to behave. You shouldn't call people that name. That's ridiculous. That's woke and left-wing and dumb.
Right.
And it's dumb when Al Sharpton does it, and it's dumb when you do it. Like all you had to do was just be half normal, and you could have kept this thing going, and they couldn't do even that.
No. And I sort of, again, applaud when you do see people like Levin and Shapiro and Cruz. They're basically putting it so out there that everyone's like, no, man, this ain't the way. This is crazy. And I just think that, again, the toothpaste is out of the tube. That's not going back in. That even evangelical churches now are, I've heard from evangelical friends, oh no, my pastor's not Israel first. And when it's flooding into or seeping in maybe slowly to that world, that's done. It's done. And kudos to you for doing episodes on it. I don't know if did you get any pushback from even having the Lutheran scholar on?
I will say that I had people who follow me generally like me, and so I didn't get people writing to say you're a piece of what. Instead, I did get somebody who was a dispensationalist who wrote and said, I thought your interview with Adam Francisco, I think there are mistakes in it, but I did not get the sense that it came from any, that the episode itself came from a bad place or that you had sinister intentions or anything. So we can talk about this on a normal level, unlike 99% of the public. And so I appreciated feedback like that. But honestly, I think Tucker Carlson should interview Adam Francisco, who's the Lutheran theologian I interviewed, and who's got this course it's going to be up in the next week or so at scotthortonacademy.com. He's got a course that is so systematic on the relationship between the church and Israel and the Jewish people and what Christians have always believed about it. That is so systematic. There is nothing that matches it. And he could sit down with Tucker for an extended interview and explain all this step by step. He knows that, unlike Ted Cruz, he knows the scripture inside and out. And he's a Lutheran. He's just expressing the mainstream Christian opinion on this. Tucker has got to have Adam Francisco on the show. He can talk well. He's knowledgeable. He comes across as thoughtful. It will be very difficult to portray him as a hater. And it's very difficult to portray Tucker as a hater because we all know Tucker. He's just a regular guy. So Tucker, you should get that guy on. Tom at tomwoods.com. Write to me and we'll make it happen.
Yes, and then get this man on, get Tom Woods on.
Well,
and I will say too, again, on that specific topic, most of the episodes I've done on the Israel-church relationship and the real view of it versus the sort of propagandistic view are among the highest numbers of all my episodes. So it's stuff people do care about.
Yeah. Because everybody thinks there's only one way to think about it. And in a way, there kind of is, but it's not the way you've been taught. There is kind of one way to think about it.
Yes. And these streams of propaganda, again, it's all falling apart with that topic, with the media topic, with the Epstein thing. And a lot of it was because of Donald Trump and his movement. And so to backtrack on it, it's too late.
For him to become the gatekeeper.
Yeah.
Like that ain't going to work, man.
Right. We are, I understand that a lot of the neocons were gatekeepers against people we like Paul Gottfried and Sam Francis. Those days are gone. If Sam Francis was still here and Paul Gottfried possibly a little bit younger, they'd be massively popular names right now.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I keep saying it, but it kills me that Pat Buchanan is not a public figure anymore.
Yes, me too.
Jeez, he could go on a victory tour.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Anyway,
if Ron Paul and Pat Buchanan were just several decades younger, that could be our next ticket, and I think it would win.
Oh, because Pat, first of all, Pat, they complement each other.
Yes.
Because Pat has some things Ron doesn't have. And they'd both be the first to admit it. But like Pat is a devastatingly effective public speaker. And the fact is, he was on Crossfire debating the left for years and years and years and years. He can do it in his sleep. So anyway, we can't do this. This is like me, what would have been like to have Murray Rothbard on Joe Rogan. It breaks my heart having these hypotheticals here.
But the good one with that hypothetical is we sort of have that because it was Dave Smith so many times. And he's, he's not like a scholar like Murray was. Dave would say, I'm just a comedian. But we know he's more than that. So I think that's a step in that direction.
Oh, it is. But for me, it's more like I want the vindication of this specific person,
For sure.
So anyway, but perhaps, in another life, we'll get to see that happen. But Buck Johnson, Counterflow with Buck Johnson is the show to check out to get more of our friend Buck. Thanks so much, Buck, as always.
Tom, it's an honor. You are a hero and a champion, and you're so good at what you do. And I've been a fan for a long time, and I'm happy to be here.
Thanks so much, Buck. I appreciate it. And don't forget, everybody, join me for the best vacation of your entire life. TomWoodsCruise.com. Scott Horton will be there. Clint Russell will be there. Maybe someday Buck Johnson will be there. But check it all out at TomWoodsCruise.com. And thanks so much for watching.
Make yourself and those you love less vulnerable to the regime, both mentally and physically. Get more forbidden information at tomsfreebooks.com and be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. See you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.